Hi, I'm James, and I'm down in London. Behind me you can see a very significant ship, HMS Belfast. It's probably one of the most interesting examples of a surviving World War II ship. So let's do a little dive into her history. Moored quietly now on the River Thames, HMS Belfast is at peace, but the silhouette holds echoes of Arctic convoys, shore bombardments, Cold War patrols, and much, much more. Let's look at some of the more obscure bits of her history. She was launched in 1938, just a year before the Second World War broke out. Belfast was built for fleet screening and surface combat, but a German magnetic mine nearly ended that story early on, crippling her in November 1939. She spent 2 years in repair and modernisation, emerging leaner, tougher and bristling with upgraded systems. For example, the advanced radar that replaced the 2 search planes that it held previously. What returned to sea in 1942 was one of the most advanced cruisers of the Royal Navy, and it wasn't long before it saw action. Those triple 6-inch turrets aren't just for show. Escorting Arctic convoys to Russia, Belfast fought in some of the hardest and harshest seas on Earth, providing cover against U-boats and Luftwaffe raids. During the Battle of the North Cape in December 1943, Belfast's radar-guided star shells were the first to illuminate the German battleship Scharnhorst, allowing Allied guns to open fire with deadly accuracy. Conditions there were brutal. Skin could freeze to steel, and waves were powerful enough to test even the reinforced hull. 6 months later, Belfast was off to the Normandy coast for Operation Overlord. She shelled German shore batteries and strongpoints at Gold and Juno beaches, firing thousands of rounds in support of Allied troops. She was actually meant to fire the very first naval shot of D-Day, but another eager captain just beat her by a minute by firing a little bit early. Now these barrages were powerful enough to crack the ship's toilets from the shockwaves. And as a forgotten part, when troops needed help ashore, the sailors landed on the beaches. Over 700 of them acting as stretcher bearers and assisting in the chaos on those beaches. Below decks, the crew lived cheek by jowl. Up to 950 people slept in hammocks just 21 inches apart. The ship had 6 bakers who had turned out over 1,000 bread rolls daily, not just for Belfast but often for nearby ships as well. And crew recall the smell of fresh bread lifted spirits even during the harshest of times. And it wasn't all hardship. The crew rigged shark-netted pools to swim in the Far East, hired local laundrymen in Hong Kong, and even pampered the ship's cat Frankenstein with a tiny stitched hammock. And Frankenstein earned his keep, chasing rats, and the affection of the crew. Now, the Admiralty Fire Control Table, which was actually an analogue mechanical computer, allowed all 9 6-inch guns to stay locked on a target even in rough seas, and it could fire 96 rounds per minute with startling accuracy. Amazing when you think of the standards of technology at the time. Now in 1949 she was in the Far East, and she played a supporting role during the Yangtze incident when HMS Amethyst was trapped by communist forces. Belfast was part of the force that arrived to assist, lending vital support and readiness during the Amethyst's escape. And it was well portrayed in the film Yangtze Incident, which I would highly recommend, although it doesn't feature Belfast in that. The following year, in 1950, she was deployed to Korea, offering naval gunfire support and emergency aid. Over 2 years, the crews fired thousands of rounds and consumed over 56,000 pints of Navy rum. Unfortunately, one sailor, leading seaman Lao So from Hong Kong was tragically killed by a North Korean shell from a shore battery, and this was the only combat casualty, or combat fatality rather, on board during her entire career. Today, the forward guns are fixed in a training position, maybe about 12.5 miles away, right at the London Gateway services on the M1. Yeah, I'm never quite going to be feeling the same way when I'm there again. Now, she was decommissioned in 1963 and was very nearly scrapped. She was saved only by a last-minute campaign and sold to a preservation trust for £1. And since 1971, she's been sitting here on the Thames in London, quietly and rising and falling with the tide, a whole 6 metres with every high to low tide. And she is well worth a visit. Hopefully that's given you some insights into some of the more obscure bits of Belfast's history, and I'll see you soon for another video.